Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talking with the Dad, episode 33. We're almost catching up to Stevie's age here. Big news, Steve's birthday tomorrow. Happy birthday, my friend.
Thank you.
How are we celebrating? How are we celebrating this evening?
Had a great dinner tonight. Had some cube steak with broccoli and pasta. Absolutely amazing. And
Okay.
Just relaxing. About to record this podcast, and when 12 o'clock comes, we'll see how it goes. I got to be to work at 9:30 tomorrow. So,
well, you have a beer. You have a beer. That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
What kind of beer do we have? It's a special beer.
No. The one I have right now is not special at all. It's Newcastle. I had a leftover Newcastle, so that's what I'm enjoying right now. But I have another one that's a bourbon barrel ale. Amazing stuff. Actually, they didn't have the stuff that I wanted when I first got there, which is very disappointing. But they tried to upsell me on some other stuff. Yeah.
A good upsell.
I'm like, how much is the bottle? They're like, oh, this bottle?
$73.
Close. $85 for 24 ounces of alcohol.
I know where you were. So I know that, but I know the quality of stuff that they have too. So
it was
to
really
be
good.
fair, it's very, very good stuff.
Yeah. I did a sample and I was like, this is
a sample,
delicious.
like a responsible adult.
Yeah, like 6 of them. And then they asked me to leave. The things got blurry. I came to again.
And then I had one. Seriously, I checked my bank account and I had $80 more than I had when I walked in.
I'm running down the street. I don't know why the cops are trying. Actually, no cop jokes tonight. We're gonna just steer away from that one.
Yeah, we're gonna get away from that. So we have no guests. This is the first time in a while that we've had no guests. It's about a month since we've had just us. It's exciting. It's refreshing. As much as I love having a guest, I like these as well. We did one of these midweek too, though.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
We haven't been putting out a crazy amount of content recently. There really hasn't been anything going on. Right. Nothing noteworthy. UFC coming back, but we know how those episodes go. That's really about it. That's kind of the only news that's been going on until recently, until this week, really.
And then everything just started popping off.
And everything kind of popped off again. But yeah, so we wanted to mention that at the beginning of the show. Sorry for no content recently, but when we switched to this talking head audio-based format, we decided that we wanted to do quality over quantity, which is we were doing quantity before. So we've taken that liberty, moved ourselves into a place where we could do less videos, but we feel like they're better, and we feel more proud and more happy about the content that we're actually making. So just want to throw that out there first. Before we get into
dare I say that we're having more fun too. I think there was a point where it just got really, really tense towards the end.
Got monotonous.
I know we're about to jump into some topics. There was one that I actually should have brought up, but I totally forgot. But I'm just going to catch you off guard with it. So apparently, allegedly, it has been confirmed there will be a PS5 reveal sometime
June
this week.
3rd, from what I've heard.
Yeah, it's somewhere between June 3rd and June 5th. No one can lock down the actual days, but it apparently that's what it's going to be. And there's a lot of industry excitement buzzing around. It's amazing how the ebb and flow of this entire thing, right? Like Microsoft was winning for so long, and then slowly but surely they stopped winning. It was like every event they hosted, they stopped winning. And now there's a lot of buzz around the PlayStation 5 now. A lot of that could be people wanting it to succeed after this huge buildup. They got a lot on their shoulders with whatever event this is going to be, but we'll see. The Unreal Engine test definitely generated a lot of buzz. I know it wouldn't for a guy like you, but for a lot of other people, are like, oh, this is really cool. They did get caught out there in a little bit of a lie with the no cutscene thing and there are no loading times, but we'll go into that another time.
Yeah, I mean, okay, well, but we can talk about it now, right? There's not a possibility at this moment that you can't have loading screens. Actually, first game to ever do no loading screens, Tony Hawk American Wasteland. You didn't have loading screens in the game after you were in the game, right? Like in between areas, you would just skate this really long hallway, right, to go from the first to the second area, and that was your loading screen. I didn't know that until like 10 years later. I went back and played, and I'm like, wow, wait a second, I'm going to a different area. There's no loading screen. Oh, it was a 3-minute ride through this empty area. That's my loading screen.
Yeah, same thing in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, or famously the Tomb Raider games. Whenever she's crawling through a wall into a next area, that's the loading.
That's your loading screen.
Yeah. So we're gonna see what this is, man. Listen, I still don't know what a teraflop is. I mean, I've read the definition. I've studied it. I've watched numerous videos. Went to school for it last week, but they got 2 less teraflops in the Xbox. You are not sold into this thing at all. Does not mean anything to you. But for the millions of console players, the war continues. Who will dominate? And then I heard someone say it quite eloquently. They're like, I'm just going to buy both systems anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I'm like,
no, but it does matter. It absolutely does matter. The solid state drive that the PlayStation is going to be using is going to do a lot, I think.
Yeah.
Quicker load times, but you even saw it the other day when you would launch Grand Theft Auto that that game takes a long time to load on a modern machine, right?
Yeah.
On a modern PC, it does take a very long time to load. Notoriously the longest load times for any game that I've ever seen, for sure. So that's kind of it though. Really, I don't really care about the console wars. I've moved past that in my life. Actually, I just read a tweet. I know we don't like to bring up UFC anymore. John Jones tweeted 5:30 tonight. I don't make half of what Deontay Wilder makes. If my reputation causes you to undervalue me this much, just go ahead and release me from my UFC contract altogether.
Yeah.
I'm sure some promoters somewhere else will be happy to pick me up. Is John Jones trying to get out of his contract?
No, John Jones is doing what most athletes do, and he's having a public negotiation. But I think Dana White is like a hard guy to have that type of negotiation with, because he's an ass, right? He's going to respond to everyone's tweets, and he responded to that tweet at a press conference. So he like 100. He's like, you're not getting Deontay Wilder money. And you know what? Here's the thing, right? John is underpaid for a champion, but at the same time, you cannot. I mean, most champions, all the champions in the UFC, say, even Conor, underpaid for what the organization makes off of each event, But that's the thing, man. You sign an exclusive contract. You're an employee to this organization.
Don't ever say that. They're not an employee.
No, 100%. They cannot. They're not independent contractors. An independent contractor, when I was an independent contractor, I could go, as long as it was a non-compete, a no non-compete issue, I can go work for another agency, right? If John even tries to walk into a Bellator building, right, and have a conversation, he's in breach of his contract already. Their non-compete is so ironclad, like it's horrible.
I wonder how well that holds up in court, though. Has anyone ever taken them to court about their contracts? Because there was in the YouTube scene years ago, there was this company called Machinima, and Machinima would sign people to a there's a word for it, but they basically sign in perpetuity. They sign in perpetuity. So they're not in perpetuity. There's a different word for it. Perpetuity is perpetuity is the right word. Going forward, forever, right?
Right.
There was a perpetuity contract that people would sign, and they didn't realize it because Machinima was really bad business practices. So then when someone finally realized it, they just took them to court and instantly got out of their contract. How can people, because they're not employees, because they don't offer them insurance outside of fight camps. They're not paid outside of fighting, right? They are subcontractors to a T, right? The way that they would work, because let's use for an example, the NFL, they're employees, right? When you're a football player, you're an employee of of your team, but which is the UFC and fighters and stuff aren't like that. They are not that.
Here's the thing, right? They cannot. So a boxer can go outside of his promoter, right? He can go to, he can even have conversations.
They are a true subcontractor. Yes.
They are signed to exclusivity contracts where they can't have those type of negotiations. They can't go to another promotion. They can't even begin negotiations on another promotion. They can have these public spats with Dana White about being released from their contract, but if he decides ultimately not to release them, then what happens? They get benched. You know what I'm saying? Like they can't move any further away from it. So John's just doing what a bunch of other fighters have done before him before. And it's going to play out in the public eye, and it's going to lower his stock as a fighter, right? So how disinterested will a casual fan become in John Jones when they're like, oh, wait, is this that same guy that hit the pregnant lady that just got pulled over for a DWI, that popped for cocaine, and apparently did some type of steroids, and now he wants to get paid more money? He's in a lose-lose situation, if anyone's going to be honest about this. And the fact of the matter is, his last few fights, if we're looking at it pragmatically, he's not a draw. right? He used to be one of their draws, but now people are going to pay less and less money to see a John Jones fight because now they're starting to see what a John Jones fight is. He's not even as interesting as a Floyd Mayweather, where people wanted to see Floyd lose,
right,
even though they deemed him a boring fighter, right? So you can be a boring fighter, but if you're a boring fighter that people want to see lose, they're dropping money every time to see you lose, so they can ultimately be disappointed. Which is, strangely enough, if people are being honest with themselves, all the internet trolls are going to come out. It's the same thing that happened to George St. Pierre. People stopped wanting to watch his fights outside of Toronto because it was like they knew what they were getting into. There was like no real buzz excitement after the Nate Diaz fight. Now, when he fought Johnny Hendricks, there was like people were like excited because this is the guy that could possibly beat him. What are we looking at with a John Jones fight, right? So I would have paid to see the Francis Ngannou fight.
I still will.
I'll pay to see those dudes fight in the parking lot. I'll pay for your portion of it to see them fight in the parking lot. John's, this, for lack of a better word, this is a sucker move. He's not good at this type of stuff. John is as bad as the president when it comes to this type of stuff. Someone needs to take his phone from him, get him back into rehab, right? He's got too much access to free information.
So, you know what? I'm on John.
I'm very angry.
I'm on John's side of this. I'm on John's side of this. To be honest with you, 100%, I'm on John's side with this. They notoriously don't pay their fighters enough, right? That's been a thing for years.
100%.
I think there's some statistic somewhere that most professional organizations, 50% of the profit that they have is what the players are paid, right? Yeah. Where the UFC only pays like 8 or 12% of all the profit that they make to the fighters. So
and they took their endorsements away from them.
They took the endorsements away.
And before they took the endorsements away, when you could have an endorsement, do you know what they made them do? So if you were Fat Farm or Monster and you wanted to pay Cowboy Cerrone, you had to pay a tax to the UFC as well.
That makes sense.
So they've made it extremely difficult, 100%, for fighters to make money. I would agree with everything you're about to say, except for when it comes to John, right? Because I think at this point in his career, he should just be grateful that the fans, are even still supporting him. He doesn't have a leg to stand on, in my mind.
So I wasn't even going anywhere with John. My next question was, if you're an up-and-coming fighter, right? Say you're Steve, 19 years old, you're making your way through the regional circuit, you're going to get signed to a pro organization, you have a few looking at you. Why do you sign with the UFC?
Because they're the biggest organization.
But you make the least money.
Yep.
Right? You're going to take the most damage because that's where the best fighters are. Right? Yep. And your shot at being the champion is the least. Yep. Why do you sign with the UFC?
Because it's set up in a way because that is the NBA of MMA.
Right. But who cares if it's the NBA of MMA if you go to Bellator, get paid twice as much, have a better shot at being a champion, and can have your own endorsements?
Well, it depends on what type of fighter you are, right? So, and I'm not disparaging the guys over at Bellator, but let's say you are a 19-year-old Zach, right?
Yeah.
And you've been training nonstop in the gym, and your real motive in this whole thing is to face the best on the biggest stage.
That would never be my motive. That would never be my motive. Right? Like, and I think as a young fighter, you have to have this business mind because you have 8 years, right? Yep. That's longer than the NFL and less than baseball and hockey to be the best you in fighting, right? You have about 8 years, I think is what the number is, right? You can fight from 22 to 30, and by the end of that, you're pretty much done. Some people have longer careers, some people have shorter careers, right?
Most people peak physically at like 33.
At like 33, but if you start fighting in the UFC at 21, there's no way you make 33, right?
How old is John? John is like 34,
32, right? 34, something like that. He's an exception. There are exceptions, right? Glover's an exception. Like a bunch of those guys are exceptions. But your average UFC fighter, the person who peaks in top 15, right, doesn't ever get a championship, is going to get 8 years to do their thing, and that's it. Why would you not want to make the most money out of your 8 years? I get it. If you're championship material, right? Like this, but this goes a different way. Aaron Pico, right? And everyone touts as this next up and comer who signed with Bellator.
Yeah.
Like you have to make your money in those years. You're going to take so much damage. You're going to take literal years off of your life.
Yeah.
You can't go to a UFC right? It doesn't make sense. It is business mindedly wrong to go to the UFC.
No, you're 100% right. I'm going to give you a crash course in history that's going to even affirm your point even more. So when the UFC was up and coming, it was the only game in town, right, for MMA. And then we had Pride, right? And so Pride was actually the UFC back then, because this is where the greatest fight. I don't care how
ever. Yeah.
I don't care how their docs spin it. Everyone wanted to watch Pride fighters because they were the cream of the crop, right? Yeah. This is where the best is going down. But a lot of shady stuff going on with Pride, right? You could just as easily get a pound of coke instead of a paycheck, apparently, showing up that night.
Well, it was run by the Yakuza, right? Yes, so let's be fair.
Trustworthy guys. I've always had good dealings with them.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying that's.
But here's the thing, right? So more people started going to the UFC, kind of like they're doing with Bellator. It became available for what you were talking about to happen. More fighters have to make the decision, like, hey, and it only takes a switch in their mind. The big stage is where we are, right? So if we all start going to Bellator, if the best competition starts going to Bellator, if the best fighters start going to Bellator, then it's Bellator. But the problem with Bellator is they're still trying to recuperate from the last guy who was running the organization. And no disrespect to the guy who's running it now. I always forget his name. From
Scott Coker.
Used to run Strikeforce. They just he has a second-rate mentality with a second-rate setup. So all the burden falls on the fighters and the fans, right? And it should fall on them to promote good shows. You know what I'm saying? Like they can't even get their. I'm just gonna say, and this is all subjective. None of it's objective. Yeah. I enjoyed Bellator more when it was a tournament Grand Prix style, because then it was like best fighter.
What they're going back to?
Yes.
Okay. They're going back to that. But
it doesn't have to be barbaric. It doesn't have to be this all on the same night, right? But I would rather the cards be set up that way. So me and you fight on the 16th. The other guys we could possibly face in our bracket fight that same night. Then we meet up again, in a month
or two?
You get more,
right.
or 2 months regular cards, and then there's a discernible ranking system. We know that people have earned their way to the shot, to the title. But I agree with you 100%. So but no one's gonna.
The only reason the UFC is the premier league, right, or the premier organization, is because that's what people say, right? We will never know if the 155-pound champion, I don't know who it is in Bellator, will beat Khabib, right? We don't know that. He won't, but we don't discernibly know that, right? Because they don't cross promote. Right. We could easily just switch the narrative and say whoever in Bellator is the best, right? You could just say that. It's like the stock market, right? The stock market everything is only valued at what it is because that's what people think it's valued at. Yeah. Like, if everyone coming up would just go, all right, we're signing with Bellator because they're going to pay us more, the UFC would fall off in a few years.
Yeah, but you know what they have done? You know what they did do extremely well, the UFC, Dana and the brothers, was great promotion and great positioning, right? They just had the best timing with the Ultimate Fighter TV spots, and it grew organically and people really enjoy it. Here's the thing though, right? Dana gets paid more than the fighters, and he's the promoter.
That's wrong.
He's the promoter, so it's bad business. And there are people who would openly debate us on this point, but I agree with you 100%. Like, the fighters need to be compensated more. But the fact of the matter is, and could be considered subjective, the best fighters in the world are in the UFC. And it's like they are in the UFC. The only person I ever seen beating anyone from Bellator champion wise, like beating a UFC, was Lima. Like, to me, he's like absolutely a beast. And we lose great fighters from the UFC like Gegard Mousasi for the exact.
I was gonna say Mousasi. Mousasi's a big one. I think Ryan Bader has some fights.
Bader was a great fighter.
He was in the UFC, right?
He just had the bad luck of being not interesting and, facing some people when they were either juicing or coming up in the ranks. I like Ryan Bader, man.
Right. I think Ryan Bader's all right. Let's see. Rafael Lovato Jr. is 85. I'm just looking here. Lima.
They have that one kid from Northern Ireland that everyone's super pumped about. The Patricio and his brother still fight there.
Pitbull. Yeah. I was actually literally just looking at him. He's a two division champion, by the way.
Yeah.
55-45. And I don't know anyone under that. Chris Cyborg is over there, but
she's in the same position over there that she was in here.
Yeah, she's not going to beat Amanda Nunes, I don't think. But like, my thought is that if everyone jumps ship, right, then the UFC crumbles because of how bad their business practices are. You can't pay your fighters less than your competition who makes less money. You can't do that. That's going to catch up to them eventually. Once someone decides to flip the narrative, or the other way is the fighters who make a fighters union finally and join every other major sports organization in having a players union, right? Yeah. And they get paid more. Yeah. Or they get to revoke the Reebok deal. Because really, that's what screwed everybody was the Reebok deal. Without the
before the Reebok deal, here's another thing, and you love this game too. You know what the big point of contention prior to Reebok was? The actual game, the UFC Undisputed game.
Right.
Fighters, they were so upset over points in the game and what what percentage they were going to get, and most of them, and it was just another fisting. You know what I would really like to see? I want to see what happens when Dana's contract is up again. I want to see what happens with Bellator. I honestly am just waiting for them to be in such a bad position where they have to be consumed, or the fighters start coming over to the UFC, because then we're going to get a lot of shakeup that way, because I think a lot of divisions.
Doesn't Fox, who owns Bellator?
Viacom.
Viacom's worth a lot of fucking money, dude.
Yeah, they have a lot of money, but will they continue to invest money in Bellator is the thing.
If it's growing, yes. Right? If card versus card, the most recent one is always doing better, then yes, you invest your money in a growing business, even if it's losing money.
I can't even remember where does Bellator come on nowadays? Where do you watch a fight?
The Paramount Network, which used to be Spike.
I
used to air UFC stuff. Yeah, right? Once upon a time.
It's funny how UFC is like, they know just when to jump ship. Right?
They bounce everywhere, dude. They bounce everywhere. That'll hurt them eventually too. I thought this ESPN deal would hurt them, but I don't see ESPN re-signing with the UFC. They have an extension clause at the end of the contract after their 3 or 5 years, whatever it is, for another 2, I believe. I think it would be hard pressed for them to buy another 2 years onto the UFC, because they're not selling pay-per-views. They were the only business in town and sold less than 1 million pay-per-views, right? Like,
what for the which fight was that? The Gaethje versus Ferguson?
Yes.
Did they release the numbers on that?
No, but they've never passed 1 million. They said it was good for the ESPN era, which I see as 750,000.
Oh, well, see, this is what I'm talking about. We have to be extremely careful, because that's still extremely good.
No, but it's not. You got to go back to the Conor days before ESPN. They sold almost 2 million pay-per-view cards, right? But hold on, every card that year did 600,000 plus. The John card.
That was for Conor. Conor hit million.
Every card that year did more than what this card did, right? There was a time, there was 2016 or something, that every pay-per-view card did more than 700,000. Right.
Wait, but think about the year 2016. The fights we had that was an amazing year for MMA. Think about the fights.
What about last year? Last year was a good year for MMA. Last year was a great year, dude. We got the.
You've hated ESPN ever since they fired you, man.
I wish I worked at ESPN. That shit would be hilarious.
Wait, hold on for a second. I just want to say one thing though. We got to give the UFC props before we move off of them, because if there's no quicker way for us not to get views on the video than to talk about UFC, but we got to give them props for the facts. They were the first sport back.
Yes, I agree. Period. Even though that Fox tried to say that NASCAR was. Fuck them. They're just mad that the UFC jumped ship, dude. I'm looking at this. UFC 246 is the most recent UFC card, which is McGregor versus Cerrone, in the beginning of this year to sell 1 million. That's it. That's the only one.
McGregor.
Right. That's McGregor versus everybody's favorite Cowboy.
No, listen, Zach,
on the ESPN era. It would have sold 2 million beforehand.
Maybe, but here's the thing. This same argument, and I love you, the same argument you're making right now is the same argument people made when it was the Ronda Rousey era. They're like, you got nobody but Ronda. You're like,
I'm not making that argument.
No.
I'm making the argument that ESPN makes it harder and less people will buy the pay-per-views because it's behind a second paywall. I don't care who they have right now. They have the best roster right now that they've ever had, I think. Right? You have Khabib is bigger than anyone from 7 years ago. Right? John is bigger than anyone. Right?
Better than any light heavyweight they've ever had.
Right, bigger than any light heavyweight they've ever had. Stipe DC is the trilogy is potentially the best trilogy that heavyweights ever seen, right? Yeah. Gaethje now is going to be huge when he fights Khabib, right? That's going to be an incredible fight. Holloway's redemption coming up against Volkanovski is amazing. Israel Adesanya is a huge star, right? Usman is a huge star.
No, he's not.
Yes, they are. 100%. Yes, they are.
Usman is an enjoyed figure, but that is the exact reason Jorge does not want to fight him, is because he's not a draw. Jorge
doesn't want to fight him because Jorge's going to lose. No, let's be fair. Masvidal's at the end of his career. He wants to go out on a few victories, and that's it. He takes the Nate fight because he beat the shit out of Nate, and it would be the easiest fight for him that he has.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm telling you factually that Jorge is a bigger draw than Kamaru Usman.
Sure. I didn't even get to Jorge yet. Jorge's huge. Right? Connor's dabbling. Right? The roster right now is as big as it's ever been. Every pay-per-view right now, over the previous one, should be the biggest card ever sold.
Here's what I want to propose. I want to propose to you, if we put our hypothetical hats on, because now I'm having fun talking about it. So let's say the contract ends, when it does end with ESPN. They get out of bed with them. I don't think people are going to come back to UFC Fight Pass, even though me and Santana noticed something the other day. When we were loyal paying fans for UFC Fight Pass, the only thing you had was the library, right? Their original content was extremely sparse. There was a few good things on there. Have you looked at the original content they're pushing out over there now? It's amazing. No. And I'll never subscribe again. I think the next step for the UFC, and you're going to disagree with me on this 100%, is to either go back to Fight Pass or sign an exclusivity deal with something like YouTube or anything else, any other venue other than the sports venue where people truly don't even want to embrace them. The fact that the station that you're on, you got more negative coverage about having a fight and being the first organization back during COVID speaks volumes. Now, of course, all reporters have to be objective, but we're not even talking about real reporters. We're talking about sports analysts, right? That is the opposite of being objective. You know, it's insanity to me. But I think they get out of the deal, and they should have just, in my mind, I thought when they were leaving Fox, they were just going to do Fight Pass. And that would have been great. Increase the bandwidth, the bit rate a little bit, make it a little bit more reliable because, I got 100 megabits per second. My fight shouldn't be loading. That would have been the best way for them to go. But apparently they feel like they need that network representation, or they'll end up like the WWE. Which, by the way, still needs network representation. And it's something that
they absolutely do. But the WWE network does way better than Fight Pass ever did. Right? The WWE, let's be fair, for what it is bigger than the UFC. And probably always will be.
But they didn't spend the time building Fight Pass. Like, they've released the libraries. They did some pay-per-view cards on years,
right? How long was Fight Pass out for? I don't know.
I think I was in Boston for work, so maybe like 2014, 2015, I want to say.
So 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. It's madness, dude. It's
I don't know. Let's just see this for a second.
Go for it.
2016 was the best year for UFC pay-per-view buys. Averaged 655,000. 2018 averaged 447,000 per buy. So, that's what I'm saying here, is that big of a drop off. And I think 2018 was a good year too, if I remember correctly. I would have to look up the cards in 2018. But I think it's very hard to get people to buy cards. The casual fan will not buy cards behind a separate paywall, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're the person who buys one UFC card a year, you're a zero pay-per-view by a year now because of you have to subscribe to ESPN Plus, which has some stuff, but not, you can't watch all the sports, right? Like I can't watch all of the hockey games on ESPN Plus, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have enough substance behind ESPN Plus to warrant the yearly purchase unless you're like you or I who buys every single card.
You know, we got to factor in piracy here too, because more and more people are pirating the cards, ironically enough, because the cards are a little bit more expensive and because they don't want to go to ESPN Plus. So just think about the revenue they're losing there as well.
I don't know. I think the UFC has really, really, really bad business practices, and I think it will forever, probably.
It's completely dysfunctional. Let me ask you this question. Speaking of dysfunction and transitioning away from that, fact checking the president? What does this great country come to, Zach? Who do these people think?
That shit was hilarious.
Who do these people think they are? That man wakes up at 6 o'clock in the morning every day and starts his day off by sending me a tweet riddled with mistruths and ad hominem. And I, as a loyal fan of Trump, I buy hook, line, and sinker. I haven't researched anything since 2016. I have not researched anything that man said because I assume.
Unfortunately, I believe you on that.
The leader of the free world tells me that Pepsi is a communist regime. I believe that they are a communist regime. But it's interesting. Has there ever been anyone else that Twitter has ever put that fact check bubble up for?
As far as I know, no. It's a new thing.
All right. So you tell me, because I've been.
You got to start at the top, though. You got to start at the top.
Take it away. Take it away.
Right.
Take it away.
No, I mean that's fair. If you are going to spew misinformation on Twitter, Twitter has an algorithm or a person, I'm not sure, that will put a fact check there and give you the actual information of what's behind what was said, right? Which I seem to be, I'm okay with it. I don't mind it as long as that's where it ends, right? They don't censor you, they don't delete your tweet, they don't change the algorithm so all of your followers don't see it, right?
Right.
As long as they put the little bubble there, it says, hey, here's the actual information behind this. This is wrong. I'm fine with that. Like, you can do it to me. You can do it to you. We could spell check you. That would be great. But Trump took this as him being censored, which it's just not correct. No. And put an executive order in immediately, like within 12 hours. Also, while there's a pandemic going on, which we had 100,000 people died in the U.S., there is a riot going on in multiple cities multiple cities around the country. Like there's a number of very big pressing issues going on right now, right? And he decides that he needs to take time out of lawyers, out of his time, out of whatever, so that he could tweet whatever he wants and doesn't get a little bubble next to it. Jack has already come out and said that they're going to keep doing it. It is not censorship. It is not censorship under their interpretation of whatever the executive order was. So they're just going to keep going on with whatever it is. So
it's not censorship according to the letter of the law either.
It's not censorship according to any definition from any moron across the world. So that's what happened. Trump used his time, like he does golfing, in a world right now that probably needs a good leader to further his own interest.
So interestingly enough, this whole situation, right? I'm on record saying multiple times. First of all, I got to set the record straight. I didn't vote for Trump, but I was for damn sure not going to vote for Hillary either. So guess what I did? I was that guy.
You wrote in Gary Johnson.
I'm like, I voted for myself that year. And then,
Steve, one vote. Where did that? Wait.
Yes. But here's the thing, right? So it's interesting, right? Because Trump signs this executive order, right? And he takes a buckshot at social media. But there have been long-standing issues with social media in regards to censorship, the things you have described that they've actually done to people. When I say social media, I'm lumping Facebook and Twitter into the same
That's
place.
Social media. Yeah, when you say social media, it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
In some instances, YouTube as well.
YouTube could be considered social media. I could agree on that. I think it's an entertainment platform, but there's a few others, but all of those are included absolutely in that.
So here's the thing, right? So you and I both know that they have done the things that you've stated before. They've changed the algorithm. They shoved people so far down the algorithm that their videos don't get picked up. How many times have we turned on YouTube or Facebook and content creators are like, hey, listen, I don't know what's going on. I got dumped 200 subscribers. People are telling me that my videos aren't coming up anymore. And they go through the whole spiel. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and put the alert bell on so you know when I'm actually doing stuff. One person on YouTube who has to remain nameless did probably the most rudimentary but smartest thing I've ever. He's like, hey, I'm just going to start posting my stream schedule on Facebook. And you can find it on the Patreon page as well. So that way you know when I'm going live. Yeah. So there have been things that have happened that can be considered censorship, or at the very least, them lording their power over deferring views. So it's amazing to me that yet again, this moron has done something that benefits people. But look who it's coming from. And I told this to a friend of mine. Consider the source of the gift, and it almost makes the gift not worth it in some instances, right? Like, it's like nobody wants a gift from their racist grandmother, even if the gift is the thing you were looking for. But it's like, how much stuff did you have to listen to get that gift? And it's he's got the friggin' attorney general standing next to him, right? We're talking about stations of office that are supposed to be held with prestige and honor. And you've turned this man into if it's okay for me to speak now, Mr. President, anyone else would have done this, I would have been like, cool, if it was valid.
But in a different scenario, he feels offended, so he has to go and do something about it, right?
Yeah,
in the wrong entirely, but just because he feels he's a man with the biggest superiority complex that has ever existed, right? Yeah. He won the presidency because Obama said he would never be a president, right? That's literally the reason why he ran, from what I understand, right? If you tell him he's wrong, he doubles down on the fact that he's right, right? He has like the brain and the mentality of like a third grader, right? And you're gonna find this out soon. Your kids will be there soon. You can't tell a third grader that they're wrong, because but a third grader's always right? Like exactly the way Trump is, dude.
They have the exact drive to do it. Here's the thing about him too, man. He is a perfect, it's a businessman. He's a perfect troll, and he's the perfect marketer, right? So he knows how to market to his base. He knows how to turn the liberal media on itself, right? So every time they bring up in the news that he's not wearing a mask, which is a valid point, right? I get it. It's a valid point. If you're going to put something out there, you should wear a mask as well. Just as a leader, it helps for people to see you doing this thing.
Don't ridicule someone publicly because they wore a mask.
100%. But here's the problem. The Democrats fall into his trap every time, right? So you know what happens after the 12th hour of coverage of the president not wearing a mask? When people have been dealing with what they feel like is a leftist regime that's taken away their freedoms in America, you know what happens psychologically? It helps to galvanize them more. It helps them to turn on them even more. And it also starts to prove something that we all know about mainstream media, whether it be Fox or CNN or MSNBC. They've divorced themselves from doing legitimate journalistic work to being rallying points for either party, right? And he knows that. So he plays them every time. Now, here's something that's really interesting. Tucker Carlson actually came out, and he has said multiple times, he's like, the president should not be tweeting on this. This is not an issue you tweet about. This is an issue you argue from the floor. This is something you argue with legislation. You don't friggin' go to a tit for tat with a private company that has the right to do exactly what they did, right? In the flow of information. You're supposed to fact check things. You're not supposed to take anyone's.
I feel like you should just be truthful enough in the statements that you say, because as the president, right, probably the first or second most powerful person in the world, should be so scrutinized that even when they double check you and triple check you and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, and you get down to the person who hates you the most, they can't say that you were a liar, right? Your thing should be combed. It should be perfect. Now, you're allowed to have an opinion, right? An opinion is different from fact, but you also shouldn't be tweeting out like, oh, dude, you don't need to wear a mask. Like, you're fine. You're fine. Everyone can be close together and breathe on each other. You're fine. Right? Yeah. Because that is not true. Right? Like, you will get it. Like, you can't go through and just be a liar for the sake of being a liar. And that's what he is. Because it proves he does things to prove his point, and it doesn't matter anyway. So I've always said I didn't agree with a lot of things that the Obama administration did. Right? I thought they were pretty 50-50. 75-25, whatever it was, right? They're pretty 50-50 on success versus fail rate on a lot of stuff that they did and said. But I can never go and be like, man, Obama was a bad statesman. Right?
Oh no, he's a great orator.
He's a good orator. He always represented the US well in public outings and with other world leaders, right? Trump doesn't do that. Right? One of the biggest stories when Trump was first president was how he handshakes people and pulls them in until it was like either Trudeau or like
it's a Queens thing. It's a Manhattan. It's a New York thing. Like, get in here. Let me fill you. Let me fill you again.
But not even that. But it was just to overpower people so because he's so weak in so many fields. He needs that to look like he's a good leader, right? Like dude. I hate the president. I hate the things that he does. I've never liked Trump, though. To be fair,
complete scumbag and moron, and anyone that would just that would disagree with me, I would say let's argue the points. But here's the thing: we have to make sure we're arguing the correct points, right? So people enjoy Obama for his stature and the way that he was and the way he carried himself as a president. But can you also objectively look at the things that he's done policy-wise that were detrimental to the country, selling us out to China, helping to get us along?
That's what I just said. 50-50 on all of his policies, right? Like pretty much 50-50, I would think. But he was a good statesman. And that is almost more important when you're the president, because realistically, everything ends with you, but like 98% of the work is done outside of your control.
Well, here's the thing about Trump, man, and I'm gonna speak completely candidly, right? He's going to get elected for another term,
absolutely,
right? And here's the thing, and you know where I stand on a lot of stuff. You know, it's going to be hard for anyone who endorses Trump or says that they voted for Trump to ever call themselves a classical conservative ever again. They would probably be closer to at this point a very right-leaning libertarian in my estimation. But again, that's just my opinion. You can't say that this man upholds any conservative values, but what he does do is he panders to conservative values, right? So the whole thing with the church, appreciate it. Good looking out, dog. Thanks for coming for our bat. But I know I recognize it for the same thing that the liberals do with the African American community. I know where I'm being pandered to, right? Even if that pandering does yield a positive result. I know that this man does not have a biblical worldview. He has no interest in a saving faith or anything like that. He's pandering to the Christian vote. So with that said, good looking out. I appreciate it, but you got to look at these things with your eyes wide open. You have to fact check the leaders. You have to fact check
everybody. Everyone. We should be fact checked. You know, if we say something that is blatantly a lie, if someone in the comments is like, hey, by the way, at this timestamp he said this is actually the truth, I would love that, right? Yeah. Because I don't mind being corrected when I'm clearly wrong on something, and that helps me be a better person going forward.
Absolutely.
Keeping on the Trump topic here, the tweet that he put out earlier today about having the National Guard sent into Minnesota, did you see that?
Yes,
where he's calling everybody thugs.
When the looting starts, the shooting starts. Yeah.
Yes, and he's calling everybody thugs. And like, if you're a person out there who's a Trump supporter and you can't see the fact that this man is a racist moron, then I don't understand. Like your objective view on what is right and what is wrong is probably skewed, right?
So with
dude, you can't be the leader of a country that is going through so many issues and constantly trying to rile things up.
100%.
Did it with COVID, doing it with this, has done it with every side of everything. I think he was even spoke out against Colin Kaepernick kneeling during the national anthem, right? Like, I don't understand how as a person you could see that and not go, oh man, this guy's an idiot. Right, or this guy's wrong. I don't mind if you vote for him, because I'm not gonna whatever. Right, you have your opinion on things, but you have to at least clearly see what he is for who he is.
Well, here's the interesting thing about that, because I 100% agree with you. He's a marketer and he knows how to market himself We just went over that in nauseam. In regards to the rioting and looting and things like that, again, he's got this buckshot approach, but sometimes he lands on some truth. But you should not, as the president, stoke the flame, right? So I can hold two positions at the same time. That man was killed unjustly, whether it was other mitigating issues that he had health wise. That was all exacerbated by having a knee on his neck. He could have had a heart condition, and that's what killed him. But having your knee on his neck is what caused the heart condition.
It was a blood choke, 100%.
The next thing is, I can hold that position that was morally wrong, legally wrong, all of it.
Correct.
But at the same time, I could turn around and say, I do not believe in looting. I do believe in civil unrest, right? I do believe in marching. I believe it's your right as an American to be able to protest. Looting does not honor his death in any way, shape, or form, doesn't bring any comfort to his family. And also, looting is self-motivated achievement, right? You're stealing. That's what looting is. You moved away from a political statement to, I'm just jacking some stuff. But if I'm the president, I simply state what the law is. We're going to have these things investigated to the fullest matter. And then we're also going to have to handle the situation going on with the rioters. You don't start saying things like, that's when the shooting starts, because we know what base he's speaking to at that point. I'm not saying he's speaking to Klansmen. He's speaking to undecided voters, even in the African-American community, who are looking at this and going, man, this is not right. Like this is wrong on both fronts. You understand what I'm saying?
So yeah, I totally agree. Same thing, during like Katrina or whatever, right? When all the looting and stuff happened. It's wrong, right? Like, listen, to be fair, I don't care if you loot a Target, right? But we shouldn't need roof Koreans like we had in the LA riots,
exactly.
Where these mom and pop shops are afraid, right? And it has happened already in Minnesota, right? Listen.
Yeah. Dude, they burned down the Native American Outreach Center.
Did they really? I didn't know that. There's so many. Dude, they burned down a police precinct.
Like the police precinct? Okay, I kind of understand that because that's where your anger is.
I'm more on board with that.
But the Native American Outreach Center?
That's ironically hilarious. I'm sorry. That's bad. But yeah, dude. I understand the riots. I totally understand the protests and the marching and all of that. Again, I don't care if you loot a Target. To be fair, that's all insured. They're going to get all of that money back for anything that you took, right? That's all insured by whatever. But like, dude, leave your community alone, right? Target isn't part of your community. Let's be fair, right? No, there was 6 mom and pop shops that were selling things before Target moved in. Target moved in. Now there's one. Right? You should be supporting those businesses, not calling for violence, not calling for any of that, but who cares about Target?
Also, it delegitimizes the argument. I'm sorry to cut you off. You know what else was burned down in there? So there was actually some low-income houses that were being built.
Yeah, so burned those down too. I saw that.
I've worked in the nonprofit sector for years, and this is where I always get kind of jacked up. Like, if we ever go to a conference or something like that, you're more than likely going to have to pull me off of someone if they're like, yo, you're a sellout. And I'm like, yeah, what have you done? I worked in nonprofit for years, enjoyed it, gave my entire self to it, helping people find housing, getting off the streets, dealing with their substance abuse issues. So when you burn down a nonprofit house, I have to let you know, it takes a lot of money and a lot of red tape for even one of those places to get built.
Yeah.
That's money that's not even allocated in the budget most times. Like, people are begging for these things to get built. So like Zach is saying, you burn that type of stuff down. Do you really think when it's time for the billing next year and the census, when they go through this, like, there's not going to be any more money reallocated to that situation? They're not going to be big.
Yeah. Like, sorry, you got it. No, that's fine. That's you're 100% right. Like, you got to in this, you got to support your community. Yeah. You have to really, what the U.S. should be doing and the protest should be doing is a better trained and better picked through police force. I have said 100%. This. I don't know if I'm on record saying it, but you probably know what I'm going to say. To want to be a police officer, you have to be a crazy kind of person, right? You have to want to be a person who's in control of other people, who wants to be in control of other people, who almost feels like they need to be in control of other people, right? That's the kind of person you have to be, or that it is, from what I've seen, who wants to be a police officer, right? I almost think, like, to be a really good police officer, you have to, like it used to be like this. You have to be from that community. A lot of times what they do is they pick people who are in the communities and pull them out and send them somewhere else, right? But like where I grew up, right, where we live, a lot of the cops here grew up here, know everybody here. And if you've ever noticed, the police force here is actually really well liked, which is kind of strange for a place. But I know 90% of the police force, right? I went to school with them, right? I was friends with them growing up. Like, I know these guys. Nothing crazy happens here with the police force. But you get a big place like Minnesota, not Minnesota's not a big place, but like Minneapolis is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
They're shipped in from all around the state. Like that person in, I don't know, the 4th Ward in Louisiana didn't live there, didn't grow up there, doesn't know what goes on there, right? Isn't there to protect the people. He's there to protect the police force. And really what it needs to go back down to is they need to be better picked through, better training. There need to be people from the community, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and that should be your police force. And I think everything kind of is better going forward. And I don't think we're going back on that.
So here's the thing, because you touched on something amazing, because it's like a police officer is a huge station, right? We're talking about a station of authority in a community.
Massive
and
authority.
You're talking about bringing up people who have to respect. I believe this about doctors. I believe this about lawyers. People in Senate, people all the way down to local government. You have to respect the station that you're in and know that this is like something that's almost, not even almost, it's a God-ordained station. You're supposed to be bringing a level of civility and good to the world. And when you start treating it like it's a job, not a job, it is a job. When you start treating it like it's any other job, right? Like you go to Burger King, there is no higher calling to Burger King. You just go, at best, you just do your job just good enough to give anyone food poisoning and take pride in it. And just, do the best you can. But when you're a police officer, that's a station to higher calling. And they should be a more exhaustive. And I know it's pretty exhaustive now with their psych evals and things like that.
But it's not though. Right? Yeah. That's my issue is that maybe the first one, maybe the one to get in. Right.
Yeah. But to stay a cop. Yeah.
Yeah. But to be a cop, kind of different. I feel like right now I could go through fucking the force and get onto the police force, right?
You will 100% get chosen.
Right. I feel like I could be fairly confident that I could go do that job right now. Right. Yeah. But that shouldn't be the case, because 15 years from now, I'm going to be complacent and it's going to be, it's like, I won't be bad at it, but you should, like, every year, maybe you get evaluation, something. Because a lot of the times the guys who are at the top who are just punching a time clock, right? They're not there because they want to do better. They're there because that's where they get paid to be, right?
Yeah.
That's what's wrong with the police force. I'm curious what it's like in other countries, right? I've never lived outside the country. I don't have I have some family live outside the country, but I don't have anyone close enough where I can go, what is your police force like, right? I don't know. I don't know what it's like in Japan, right? What is it? But here it's bad. The police force everywhere has a bad reputation. I've never done anything any more than like slap on the wrist illegal. And every time I see a cop, I'm a little nervous. That shouldn't be the case. You should feel better that there's a police officer around and not worse.
So there have been outreach programs for sure, right? Here's the problem, in my estimation, right? It's 100% what you're saying. There aren't a lot of cops in most instances from the community. And even if there are cops who are from the community, it's discouraged for them to have any really long connections. They've gotten away from outreach programs where cops spend the days like at the alderman or going to town hall meetings. So people, and then there's just a general distrust for police officers from everything that's happened. Right. We're talking even prior. I have to educate people on this all the time. I may not believe in the term like systemic racism. It's not that I don't believe it exists. I don't believe it's accurately used. When you say that, you mean more historical racism within the country, saying what's happened with the police officers. But when you go back, it wasn't just directed at African Americans. We're talking about the type of stuff that they did to the Irish. We're talking about the type of stuff that's happened all over this country, and people are still trying not to see the cops in that light. Are there good officers? I believe so, 100%. I was on my way upstate to go get Marvel that day, and this cop had me dead to rights. I was doing 80. I didn't even realize I was doing 80. And he pulled me over, ran my license. He's like, hey, man, please be safe. You're driving 80 miles an hour.
I've never, dude, does that happen when you're a dad? Because I've never had that happen. And I'm always so nice to police officers. I'm always so nice.
I went to check out a church once in Santa Ana, and there was actually, this was during another shooting, right? And so the church decided, instead of doing a sermon that day, they were going to have local community leaders. They did it extremely well, and they actually had community leaders come in, and they had an officer come in. I believe he was a sergeant, and they wanted to have him address the church and address some of the African Americans and Latinos there, and then like kind of put them at ease. Now, did it cure racism, Zach?
No,
absolutely not. Did it cure the way the community looked at cops? It helped. It helped that this one officer walked into the lion's den and no one attacked him, right? And he actually, he was able to speak as honestly as he possibly could about certain situations, but it helped because it put a face to the police force, and it also showed empathy. He obviously did not comment on the shootings, but what he did say was, here are things that I try to train officers on and how I try to train them in the communities they're working in, right? So when I see stuff like that, I know there are people who are trying to enforce change, but this is a bad look, right? And we might have been making some progress, right? But this was I don't know if we were.
I can't quantify it. Quarterly or bi-quarterly, something bad like this happens where it's like, dude, what the fuck were you doing? What were you doing? Yeah. And every time something like this happens, I'm just like, please don't be in New York. Please don't be in New York, right? Like, and you shouldn't have to think that.
So this is where my true political views on a lot of things come out, man. Beware the state, right? I'm not going to bring this type of smoke to our channel, but I'm saying that you need to beware the state, right? We've given too much control in so many instances to the state, and then we see how it pays out. Fact check everything. Beware the state, man. Like, you have to start looking at your local elections. If they are electing a sheriff in your community, you need to read up on this dude. You need to read up. I don't get it. I mean, you're probably an exception to the rule in regards to your generation, like when it comes to a thoroughness and knowing what's going on in your community. Not that any of this stuff would matter now, but the officer that was involved in this situation had a litany of complaints.
15 complaints or something. Yes. Yeah, I've seen it. Involved in multiple other unwarranted shootings, I believe. I actually saw the list somewhere, and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. That's a corrupt police department. Sorry, you go ahead. I'm sorry. I have a thing, but you go.
No, what's her name? Amy Klobuchar, possible
Klobuchar.
VP.
She let him continue. Yeah, I saw that. She's out of the running for vice president for sure. President. Has to be.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I cut you off.
My thought is how many of the major city police forces aren't corrupt, right? Mm-hmm. I bet you more than not. I'm saying major cities, right? I'm not saying like your small towns or whatever, but like I bet you it's already known New York City's police force is pretty corrupt, right? Like it's very fairly well known. LA, I think, is the same from what I've heard. Minneapolis, apparently. Baltimore for sure. I think DC is pretty bad. DC is one of the sketchiest places I've ever been.
Sketchy. Yeah. I'm talking about from the dope boys to the cops. I don't know who I'm scared of.
Right. But like most of the major cities, I don't know anything about Chicago. I don't know anything. Detroit for sure. I'm sure. But like all of the major cities, dude. All of the major cities has a corrupt police force. Like, how do you change that? Right? It's bred into the system. Like, you have to, like, from the top, fire everybody, but you can't do that because you're lawless for months, years probably.
So here's the thing, man, because the reverse can be said about, all right, so when I lived in Chicago in a past life, right, I understood the rules of the game. So any beef I caught from the cops, I was just never that guy. I'm like, you got me. You know what I'm saying? I've always been that guy whenever my luck is run out. But it goes two ways, right? To me, the only way to fix the issue is to start better training now. And just like any dysfunctional system, you have to start weeding out the behaviors and being willing to fire when you have to fire, and then positioning people for new positions. Also, it doesn't hurt to start training people up in the community to see this position as something valuable, like you just said, and then start having people funneled in from the community, which can also help deal with issues like crime in a place like Chicago, in my estimation. The next thing is what I'm trying to teach my sons as as little boys of color is like they have to learn to respect the station of police, even in its corruptness, right? Like you have to understand you're dealing with an authoritative figure that is doing a job, not to make them paranoid, but like this is literally their literal job is to uphold the law. Theoretically, you should have no fear if you're not breaking the law. But I will teach you how to deal with the issues when you are in the right and they themselves are not upholding the law. And you give them a whole holistic view. It starts in the community, in my mind, and it also starts in the police station because we have to deal with some of the issues that are bringing these guys down into the community. And I'm not victim blaming, so don't get up in the comments with that nonsense. But what I am saying is I lived on the south side of Chicago, right? And I understand that there has been a heavy hand used for too long, but it doesn't excuse other behaviors. You know what I'm saying? And like, and my position on this is this man died and Black lives do matter. I'm just going to say it. So I'm on the record of saying it. No one can ever accuse me of being inconsistent. I am as outraged about his death as I am hearing 60 Black people die in Chicago from gang violence because none of it's normal to me, right?
Sure.
A man dying with a knee on his neck is horrible, and so is a teenager shot on his way to school by a stray bullet. So it starts in community, and we have to deal with the police issue. Start voting some of these guys out. I mean, that's the benefit of living where we live now. I know who the sheriff is, right? Like I don't know him personally. I don't want to know him personally, but I remember when the election was coming up, and like when the ballot was out on that in the neighboring town. So it's that type of stuff.
Sure.
In my mind.
Yeah, there is no right or wrong answer, I think, about it, right? But there has to be a modicum of change.
Yes.
And it has to start, right? Like, I don't know how bad it could get, right? But there needs to be some sort of change, and it needs to be like visual, right? Like it needs to be so people can see it. So the optics are good, the actions are good, right? And even like it starts even in like fucking Congress, dude. Like everyone from the top down, there has to be like a culture change, right?
Yeah.
And it has to be pretty severe.
Yeah.
And the police force has to be redone entirely, and the visuals and optics and thought and culture around it has to be redone because now it's not good, right? And with even in schools now, you have cops and the presence is always there. I didn't have a police officer when I was in school, right? Mm-hmm. But that school now does, right? There's always a cop there, and like that guy might be cool, or he might be a complete dick, right? But that guy has to be like the coolest cop of all time because that sets everyone with that idea of like, okay, well this guy was good to me, so let's give the next one a shot, right? And it has to start there, and it has to be like. They have to make money or whatever, but they have to be good people at heart. And I just don't think the idea and culture around being a police officer is that right now. It's, well, you're here to do a job, get the job done. We'll figure out how to deal with everything else.
It's funny because the rules of engagement, it's funny that you bring up the cops too. Like, so when I went to school in Chicago in high school, I got to tell you honestly, back then I was happy. We had metal detectors, the whole nine. Cops on campus armed, but I was always happy they were there because I lived in the part of Chicago and in a time in Chicago where the murder rate was so high, like they weren't there to police the kids. They weren't, they weren't really
there to make sure no one else got there.
Yeah, right. And now we live in a time where my kids are going to go to school where police presence is needed to make sure that some psychopath doesn't shoot the school up, right? But that's an entirely different argument. But I agree with you 100%. Like we need to do better screenings with the police officers. We also need to maybe show some appreciation, like you said, to the station itself, to the cops who are working really, really tirelessly and hard to protect and serve. And, and that's why I say it kind of falls down in the community too, where I would like to see more of that engagement where community members. Have you ever watched that show, The Wire, before?
No, it's on the list. It's on the list. I'm coming up to that soon. After Breaking Bad, I decided I'll finish that. I'm going to rewatch Sopranos and then I'm going to The Wire.
I want an official Breaking Bad review, by the way, but
it's awful so far.
Shut up. There's an episode where one of the main characters finally he gets back to the beat after being like a hotshot detective, and this is after seasons, and you've never seen him happier in the community he's been fighting to save when he was like this go-hard detective than being a beat cop, walking around, greeting the community, talking to people, and it's amazing. It's like, I think that type of presence
Wire
is
set in
definitely
Baltimore,
needed.
right?
Yeah.
Sketchy area.
very, very sketchy. Very sketchy. Zach, you got anything else for this evening?
Yes.
What's up?
You've had some recent upgrades to your setup in general. What do we got? What are the upgrades? What are the plans, right? So what's the plans going forward too, I think?
We got a new chair with the lumbar support. Feels good. Let me get back up on my mic. We also got a new desk. The computer's elevated off the ground.
Yeah.
That's definitely helping with the sound because I could always hear that fan in the background where it was at before. And now we're looking at getting a new mic and audio interface for all you people all 110 of you lovely, lovely people who've suffered through my audio issues. And they're many, and I'm aware of them. Don't ever think that I'm not the first one. Like I hear them, but yeah, that's gonna be my next step is the mic and the audio interface. Man, I'm pumped.
So we added the carpet too.
Oh yeah, got the carpet.
Got the carpet. Help a reverb a little bit. Gonna put some stuff on the walls.
Yeah,
right.
Got Marvel a little bed over here.
Got Marvel a bed. We're gonna get a second camera for Marvel. Yes. We're always gonna be on the 3-person screen from going forward. Yeah. So the setup's coming together. You have a whole little office down there.
Yeah, it feels really good. And so now I just got to figure out what we're going to do with the island, get some better lighting in here. This is the podcast. I'm investing in this for these 110 people, man. I want them to remember when they knew us personally before we blow up and they try to touch me in public. And I'm like, whoa.
Bodyguard.
Get this guy out of here.
This guy gone.
Also, I'm probably going to have to get a new mouse pad. I bought this one for the island, and now I realize it's comedically too big. Like there's no reason for me to have this much pad.
My mouse pad, literally, right? There's enough space over here for the mouse, keyboards under it, and 2 monitors sit on top of it. It's not a mouse pad, it's a mat. It's a mat. That's literally actually what they call them, is a mouse mat. But actually very common to have a giant mouse mat that goes across the entire desk. Actually, there are gaming desks, as much as I hate that word, that are entirely mouse pad. So I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, so we got some upgrades coming down the pipeline potentially very soon.
Trying to pull the trigger here this week on one of them for sure.
Trying to make everything a little bit better. That's kind of what our goal has been since we stopped playing games. I don't know how long ago that was now. It's all been a blur since.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Next, we're gonna get Stevie live streaming. We're gonna get these live, and
I'm gonna be live streaming on Twitch, asking you questions like, I can't hear myself. Can you hear me?
Everyone's like, oh my god, shut up! It's so loud.
I'm good, man. That's all I got for you, man. I'm looking forward to the future, and I think we said this in the Just Chatting video, but we meant to. Direction for the channel. We're just gonna keep going. We're gonna keep focusing on bringing you quality information, quality subjects.
Yeah, maybe we'll go a little more in depth on that. Actually, what is the direction for the channel? Right, focus on the podcast for sure. We want to do heavy hitting topics for us when they come up. Right, there really hasn't been anything for the last few weeks. That's why there's not been really any content. That's why we did the kind of like a short midweek podcast style thing. It was pretty much podcast like, other than the fact that we argued for like 20 minutes about sports statistics, even though Wayne Gretzky's the most dominant player to ever live. And Jordan sucked. And
you know what, Mantis? It's our show. If we want to argue for 20 minutes about it,
shout out Fat Mantis. Yeah, I mean, there might be gaming content. We're not sure. You know, there might be a game that piques our interest, right? And we throw some videos up on it. You know, it kind of, we really want to focus on making quality videos, right? And that's our goal, and we're doing the best that we can, and we're gonna get Steve some audio upgrades. At some point we might do an in-person podcast where we do directly one of these, but with both of us sitting across from each other. I think that'd be cool. You know, maybe some skits, maybe some in-person videos, maybe some bunch of stuff, right? You know, the more people are here, the more we get motivated to do bigger and better things. So that's kind of where we sit currently. Yeah. If you guys have an idea of where you maybe want to see something that we could feasibly do, leave in the comment section, right? We're pretty open. You guys have a topic you want us to cover and, you know, we find it interesting, we'll make a video about it. Like, bunch of stuff. You guys give us some feedback is I guess what we're looking for. And I mean, I guess about it. I'm enjoying the channel, so we're gonna keep going.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Check us out on all our social media platforms. That's Facebook, Instagram, Yahoo,
Twitter.
I started a Tumblr account, but I deactivated it.
Yeah, I don't know anything about Tumblr.
It's a weird, dangerous place. I don't know how to post on here.
We have a Discord. Discord, I think, is linked down below. If not, it will be for this episode for sure. Yep. Check out the website, talkingwithdad.com. I actually really like the website a lot. I think I like the design of it. Not that I'm biased or anything, but I like it. Podbean. Apple. We're not on Spotify. That's sellouts. It won't pay us anything, so we won't go there. We won't go to Google Music because it's closed anyway.
Yeah,
we're already on YouTube, so
I keep getting emails from Google Music. They're like, "Hey, it's us again. Just want to let you know that we're not going to be a thing
here, but we're not really here."
So. And we promise we're going to get better at saying goodbye. So I'm going to say goodbye, and then Zach's going to say goodbye one more time. Good night. God bless. Stay safe.